What are some NSFW secrets about the military? While there are a lot of good people, including flat out geniuses in the military, there are also absolute morons, too. I don't mean just dumb, but dangerously stupid, as in will get you held dart. We know who they are, and if any crazy shit happens, we put as much distance between them and us as possible. On my ship there was a guy known to be dangerously stupid. He proved it by insulting a police officer in a recreation country we visited. His buddies tried to apologize on his behalf and the cop was actually going to let it go. Then this dumb shit sucker punched the cop. Cue up a dozen cops suddenly appearing and beating the dumbass unconscious, beating up and arresting his buddies, and even arresting anyone nearby who looked American. It was a clusterfuck. Prostitution was rampant when aircraft carriers were out to sea. Everyone knew where to find the list of who and what the cost would be. There were always places to go for a bit of privacy. I was stationed on a cruiser and there were great things about it. You knew everyone by name and things like the store never had to be rationed. I remember flying back and forth between the cruiser and the carrier, and I would buy a carton of cigarettes from the cruiser and take it to the carrier where because of rationing I would get $60 a pop for a pack of cigarettes. I didn't even smoke. The one thing the carrier had that blew my mind was the gig economy. There are so many nonsense roles on a carrier that people were doing side hustles for everything from laundry to maintenance. Dudes would skate out of their own work and charge a buddy to do his work. No one cared. It was amazing. Sounds like serving on a carrier is just being a glorified janitor, which kinda makes sense. Just an Empire State Building floating in the ocean. I have never met a service member that didn't directly know a buddy that offed themselves. I've been out for 8 years and I've lost 9 sailors to suicide so far that I personally served with. Yeah, a guy from my hometown area. We met as poolies and went to BC together. Ended up having the same MOS, so we went to the same base together. A whole 18 or so months after getting to the fleet he was out after smoking dope. He then offed himself about 2 weeks after getting home, all over a girl he couldn't let go of. This dude worked his ass off to be able to join the Marines too. He was a HS dropout, so he had to get an associate's degree along with a GED, and he got awarded like $80K in additional education benefits for when he got out. The amount of cheating on spouses is ridiculous. People get TDY and forget they were ever married and want you to lie for them. Whole alternate families in other countries is more common than you would think. Edit. To clarify, TDY is temporary duty. Short deployment is best way to think about it. I grew up around Fort Lewis. My 2 best friends joined the Marines right out of high school and they both immediately started cheating. And when they were in Asia they got hookers every weekend. When I go on Tinder here, there are so many women cheating on their boyfriends' husbands who are overseas. I met a girl who was 10 years older than me on Tinder when I was like 21, and ended up going to her place. Midway through ducking, I notice all the pictures around her bedroom of her kissing a guy in a uniform. Who is that guy you're kissing in all the pictures? Oh, that's my husband. Don't worry, he won't be back for another 3 weeks. Definitely caught me way off guard. Wish I could say I got up and left, but the damage was already done at that point. I didn't go back though. Edit. I forgot to add, it's very obvious when a bunch of guys ship out, because all of a sudden the clubs become overrun with women on the weekend. I'm talking like triple the clientele all of a sudden, spilling out into the streets. A buddy of mine got sheet-faced drunk one night and came into work the next day still drunk. He was a crew chief, meaning he did aircraft maintenance. His supervisor told him to sleep it off on the couch in the hangar on the flight line and get to work after a nap. A colonel got shit-faced drunk one night and drove his car home. But he didn't make it because he rolled his car. Nothing happened to him. So much Drew Gus and prostitution, and cheating and wife swapping, it's nuts lol. I was an E4 watch section supervisor at a shore command. So it was just bad. I have lots of stories of things I've seen, witnessed, and heard of. One instance, not even 2 months after I got micro, a young gal fresh from A school, so she was either an E2 E3, was in her extramarital polyamorous thing with her barracks roommate and 4 dudes, E3, 2 E4s, and 1 E5, in the command. All but one were married and lived with their wives off base, and they pretty much stayed in her barracks room, while telling their wives they were on duty or doing a deployment or whatever. I mean, not my circus, not my monkeys, but it is fraternization and other shit that goes against policy. Oh, and they like to cook and smoke meth while having greasy pasta sticks in a filthy barracks room. That's how they were discovered in the first place. We had a surprise urinalysis in the command and all of them popped. So, the young gal is on extra duty, waiting to be NJP'd and eventually booted out. And she gets the idea from someone that if she gets a merit award or valor award or whatever, she won't get a dishonorable or other than honorable discharge. Meth brain clicks on. So she and one of the guys from their group come up with a plan. One of their friends, unrelated to the group, will pretend to be suicidal and jump into Miura Bay, and they will jump in to rescue him and be lauded as heroes, and everything they've ever been done will be erased and their records squeaky clean, like nothing happened. Well, he jumped, and they jumped in after him, and then something went wrong and they were really in danger, so they had to be rescued. Einstein continues her winning streak and then says she was suicidal too. It was part of a pact, and because I am a what's up and over E4, me and another female E4 have to babysit her in 12-hour shifts, on and off, for the next 72 hours for suicide watch. We have to stay in the barracks with her, watch her pee and shit and shower. We can't sleep if we're with her. We can't leave base or go anywhere except to the naval hospital, the personnel office, the command, and the galley to eat. I was so miserable and cranky, I ended up turning full-blown auntie on her and made her clean her bathroom and her room because she was getting on my nerves with her drug-induced nonsense and whining. Meth. Not even once. There's a lot of effed up stuff that goes on, especially in the dorms and TDY. The what happens TDY stays TDY is very true with a lot of people. Adultery is rampant not only with military members but dependents as well. In regards to the dorms, of course this probably isn't everywhere, but I rarely went to a party that didn't have a handful of HS girls from on-base housing. 15, 16, 17, it didn't matter. Knew of lots of guys who went down the wrong road in that situation. Lol. I worked in a Marine Corps brig and we had an Air Force E7 or E8 come in after being drummed out because he was in love with some general's 16-year-old daughter. He swore up and down she was in love with him too. This was after he had been given several chances to stop contacting her and even being moved across the country. Us bases both overseas and in country only have to abide by the safety, chemical, hazardous, etc. rules that were in place when the base was established. But, if they decommission, close, the base, they have to bring it up to current guidelines. That's one of the biggest reasons the sub-base in New London CT is still open. To bring that base current would be more expensive than keeping it going, while bringing it to standard slowly over time. People won't like this, but the rampant infidelity that occurs on deployments. Lives ruined, years of relationships tossed, kids left in broken homes because someone couldn't keep it in their pants for a bit. It's not everyone, but it's definitely more than it should. I worked in an office with 30-40 pretty closely knit people. I knew them all well, knew their families, kids, etc. I worked with them all the time, and we would hang out outside of work often, as well. There was not a single person in that group who would have shocked me if they died by suicide, then or to this day. It was grim, man. Day in, day out, grim. My unit had its own mental health team at one point, and that's absolutely not how it's supposed to be. Also, at one point in time, a few of us went through the roster and determined that a solid 2/3s of the unit were in the process of getting divorced. To clarify, 2/3s weren't divorced, but were actively divorcing, in that moment. Not the US. My commander and his deputy got shit-faced drum cut during a 14-day live fire training. and with live fire, 20mm strafing, unguided 57mm rocket pods, 500 pounds guided and laser guided bombs dropped. That sort of training. So those two idiots have tossed the shirts and are rolling around on the lawn outside the barracks where us enlisted were sleeping. And the third in command was holding their beers. Same guys had repurposed an M72 to fire electrically ignited cartridges of gunpowder. This was used to fire a tennis ball at insane speeds inside a workshop during a beer call. Same guys used the rockets from ejection seats to try to launch the old TV into orbit. All of this within my 9 months there, and absolutely zero consequences for anyone involved. Except from the TV. That film ended up on national news. So they got a stern talking from the base commander, do not film shit like that again, Dart. I had to show my big dig to my squad first day, and I had to watch my team leader do the Ace Ventura scene where he made his Ashik's talk. It's so much gayer than you think. The military is no different from every other massive corporation in the sense that it is filled with liars, cheaters, abusive assholes, sexual predators, dishonest people, lazy people, backstabbers, power-happy assholes, rapists, thieves, psychopaths, addicts, users, smugglers, and cowards. There are also honest, genuine, hard-working people who would give you the shirt off their back. As well as leaders who will let you off easy if you screw up once, but you've kept your nose clean and have been dependable throughout your military career. Just because someone has been in the military does not make them a chivalrous, honest, heroic individual. The way we praise military men and women is great, but the majority of them do not deserve a pedestal by any means. I dated a girl in college that was in the ROTC. Talked about boot camp and the female drill instructor made the statement, there's over a mile of big dig on this base, and unless you girls get your sheet together, you won't see an inch of it. Apparently the nuclear guard is very boring. As a consequence, it gets the opposite of the best and brightest. As another consequence, they do all of the drugas. I worked with a guy that was former Air Force, and was one of the people guarding nukes, at least he said he did. Got kicked out of the Air Force for a string of DUIs, to the point that his wife had to drive him to our job. He also bragged about a lot of whack shit, such as threatening a neighbor with a sword. He was an odd duck for sure, and after getting to know him, it makes sense they would stick him somewhere like Minot, North Dakota. If you are serving aboard a naval vessel that is underway, you can get captain's mast punishment and are not allowed to request a court-martial instead. Punishment can include reduction in rank, forfeiture of pay, bread and water, and several other punishments. Armed forces members that are not serving on board a ship underway can refuse non-judicial punishment and request a court-martial. The proof of evidence is less with non-judicial punishment than with a court-martial. This guy I work with who used to serve in the Navy and on aircraft carriers told me that some of the girls would whore themselves out. He said they had a chef who was like a pimp and claimed one of the walk-in freezers or fridges was broken and then put a mattress in there, and the girls would take their guys, pay the chef a small fee, and then duck in this freezer. Yes, they got paid by the guys like actual prostitution. Lol. He was like, think about it, you see these girls at first and are like not attractive. But a couple months at sea and they're the only girl you see. Well, that starts to change. Absolutely blew me away when he told me, lol, not saying every girl in the Navy or any other branch is doing this, but there were a few who did on his ship. There is an incredibly high level of suicide. My brother has been affected by 8 of his friends in this way. I have worried so much for him, but he's very mentally tough. The military keep it a dirty little secret because they essentially treat the infantry like garbage humans, knowing full well they're trapped, won't even let them transfer out to a different company. It's sick. This is British Army. Reading these, it's become apparent that the military is a frat house after everyone is already wasted. Alarming and sad to say the least. I mean, yeah. You're taking a bunch of 18-year-olds who've never been away from home, putting them into a hyper-masculine dormitory and giving them a salary. Because they are not paying rent, they have nothing else to do but blow their paycheck on a Dodge Charger at 29.999% April and alcohol. Some of them are doing the right thing and are in married-based housing. But again, no rent to worry about and it's near impossible to get fired. A few years go by, maybe by now you're on your third ex-stripper, wife and a deployment girlfriend and at least one kid that may or may not be yours. By now you've traded in the Charger for an SUV, but you're still not paying rent, so might as well get another tattoo from the place next to the pawn shop and bail bondsman. Wife found out about the girlfriend? All good, my man. You just move into the barracks with all the drunk 18-year-olds. Rinse and repeat until you can take your 20 and pick up a retirement contract gig with one of the alphabet companies. Almost nobody likes it, but you will almost always lie to civilians when they ask you about it. You'll gripe about how much you hate it with your fellow servicemen, then the minute you're out and some random civilian is like, do you like it, without even thinking and without skipping a bit you're saying, I love it. It's the best job in the world, and even as the words leave your lips you're thinking, what the duck am I saying? I don't love this. Run. Run as fast you can. When I was in boot camp, we were in processing, and were tasked with filling out some forms. I had some brick come up behind me, look over my shoulder, and then smack me in the head while shouting, it says to fill in your full name. You ducking idiot. Why the duck did you just put your middle initial? Moron. I proceeded to tell this guy that I didn't have middle name, only had an initial. Of course, he then launched into a long-winded discourse about how ducking stupid my parents were. Hazing rituals. Hazing is still a prevalent issue within certain branches of the military, particularly among enlisted personnel. Some new recruits have reported being subjected to humiliating and degrading initiation ceremonies, including forced consumption of alcohol, nudity, and physical abuse. Sexual assaults. Unfortunately, sexual assault is a serious problem in the armed forces. According to recent statistics, nearly 1 out of every 4 women serving in the military experiences some form of unwanted sexual contact during their time of service. These cases often go unreported due to fear of retaliation or stigma. I was going to make a big post, but I'm about to be free. I'm going to stop myself from ranting. Last year my best friend committed suicide in his barracks room. Before he shot himself, he sent messages to his leaders telling them what pose they were and how much he hated them. These same leaders were regularly ridiculed by everyone in the brigade for being extremely inhumane. Their unit had an average of 2 suicide attempts a month, according to a barracks manager that I know. He also specifically addressed something that they made him do that pushed him over the edge. They never got investigated or anything, and in fact one of those 2 people was promoted and went to a different unit. We also had a coke ring going on with our officers. None of the officers got fired, charged, etc. They still work in our unit to this day. Commanders quite literally create laws or break laws for their soldiers and can even determine what kind of recovery a soldier can do after being sick, injured, etc. Doctors can say a soldier needs to be treated a certain way after an injury, and commanders can just say nah, I disagree, and thus the doctor's words become a recommendation. Flashback to the time my command team tried to force me to do PT after my foot had been cut open by a knife and I couldn't walk. There's a reason retention is at an all-time low in the military. People like to think that the worst thing that happens is you get killed, or lose a limb or something. People don't think about stuff like if you step on an IED or landmine, your crotch gets liquefied. I have seen guys with no legs desperately begging their comrades, do I still have my junk? Is my junk okay? Somebody, please, look at my junk. Is it still there? This may seem vain, macho, and dude bro, but let me ask you this. Can you imagine being 19 years old and suddenly realizing you may never be able to have sex again? Never have kids? Never truly, fully express love to somebody ever again? Can you imagine, as a teenager, having to suddenly grapple with the horror that you are going to live for the next 40 to 60 years with the knowledge that you are the end of your bloodline, and that no matter how hard you try you will never be able to experience true romantic intimacy ever again? Because I've seen it. There are a lot of ways to end up crippled. Frankly, the guys who only lost a foot, or a leg, or both in that specific scenario lucked out. Live down in a military town in Texas. The level of adultery is insane, even people who do love their ones overseas. Craziest stories I have are how human brain tastes, and a bag o' parts story, one from old neighbor. Her husband was deployed previously, this was around 2007, and was super sick after I wore a body spray that smelled like cotton candy. Well, turns out he was in Afghanistan and his best friend in his unit were in the war zone, and his buddy who was next to him caught some projectile, I assume bullet or something, and some of his brain matter got into my neighbor's husband's mouth. Tasted like cotton candy, so to this day he has that PTSD response. Story 2. My old buddy down in Texas had a deployed wife. He would get crazy stories, but one he did tell me that I remember vividly was she was on 24-hour guard and some higher up came to the gate to be let out of the base in Afghanistan, carrying a huge heavy looking bag. She asked what was in the bag and the officer responded with body parts. She laughed thinking he was being funny, but no, he opened the bag to her horror, filled with arms, legs and other body parts from medic.